morning sun cast a golden glow over Kensington Palace as Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood before her bedroom mirror, her hands trembling slightly as she fastened her pearl earrings. Today was different from any other day in her royal life. Today, she would say goodbye to William for what could be the longest separation they had ever faced. The news had come 3 weeks ago during a quiet family dinner. William had been selected to lead a crucial humanitarian mission to a remote region of Africa, where ongoing conflicts had left thousands of families displaced and in desperate need of aid. The mission would last 6 months, taking him to areas where communication would be limited and safety uncertain. Catherine remembered the moment William told her. He had reached across the table, his blue eyes filled with both determination and sorrow. "They need someone who can bring international attention to their plight," he had said softly. "Someone who can make the world care." She had known immediately that he would go. It was who William was, a man who could never turn his back on those suffering even if it meant leaving his own family behind. But knowing didn't make it any easier. The children had taken the news differently. Prince George, now old enough to understand the weight of royal duties, had nodded solemnly when his father explained the mission. Princess Charlotte had climbed into William's lap, her small arms wrapping around his neck as she whispered, "Promise you'll come back, Papa." Little Prince Louis, still too young to fully grasp what 6 months meant, had simply asked if Daddy would be home for Christmas. As Catherine made her way downstairs, she found the palace staff moving with unusual quietness. Even they seemed to understand the gravity of the day. Mrs. Jenkins, the head housekeeper who had been with the family for over a decade, offered Catherine a gentle smile and a cup of tea prepared exactly how she liked it. "He'll be safe, Your Royal Highness," Mrs. Jenkins said quietly. "The prince has a good heart, and good hearts have a way of finding their way home." In the breakfast room, William was already dressed in his travel clothes, practical khakis and a white shirt, so different from his usual formal attire. He was helping Louis with his cereal, while simultaneously reviewing documents with his private secretary. Even in these final hours, duty called. The family ate breakfast together, though none of them had much appetite. George pushed his eggs around his plate, while Charlotte kept glancing at her father as if trying to memorize his face. William attempted to keep the mood light, telling jokes and asking about their school projects. But Catherine could see the emotion building behind his composed exterior. After breakfast, they moved to the private sitting room where William's luggage waited by the door. 2 simple black bags that would accompany him on a journey that would take him further from his family than he had ever been. The sight of those bags made everything real in a way that all the planning and preparation hadn't. "I want you all to remember something," William said, kneeling down to be at eye level with his children. "Distance doesn't change love. No matter how far away I am, no matter how long I'm gone, I will love you just as much as I do right now, in this moment." Charlotte stepped forward first, wrapping her arms around her father's neck. "I love you to the moon and back and all around the stars," she whispered, repeating the phrase William always said to her at bedtime. George followed, trying to be brave but unable to hide the tears in his eyes. "Take care of people, Papa," he said. "That's what we do." Little Louis didn't fully understand why everyone was sad, but he hugged his father tightly anyway, his chubby hands patting William's cheeks the way he always did when someone seemed upset. Catherine watched this scene unfold, her heart breaking and swelling with pride simultaneously. She was married to a man who would leave his comfortable life to help strangers in need, and she was raising children who understood that with privilege came responsibility, but she was also a wife and mother who wanted nothing more than to keep her family together. The sound of cars arriving outside indicated that it was time. William's security detail and the small team accompanying him were ready to depart. The goodbye they had all been dreading could no longer be postponed. William stood and walked to Catherine, taking her hands in his. For a moment, they just looked at each other, years of shared experiences passing between them in silence. They had weathered many storms together, public scrutiny, family tragedies, the pressures of royal life, but this felt different. "I wish I could come with you," Catherine said quietly. "I know," William replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But the children need you here. The country needs you here. You're stronger than you know, Catherine." She nodded, though her heart was breaking. She had always known that being married to the future king would require sacrifices, but she had never imagined how difficult it would be to watch him walk away toward danger while she stayed behind. The family walked together to the front entrance, where the waiting cars seemed like black harbingers of separation. William hugged each child one more time, whispering private words of love and encouragement that only they could hear. Finally, he turned to Catherine. In front of the staff and security personnel, they maintained their composed royal bearing, but their hands found each other and held tightly. "Take care of yourself," Catherine whispered. "Come back to us." "Always," William promised, bringing her hand to his lips for one last kiss. As he walked toward the car, Catherine felt as though part of her heart was being physically removed from her chest. She stood with her children, their small hands finding hers, and watched as the man they all loved most in the world drove away on a mission that would test everything they believed about duty, sacrifice, and love. The first week without William felt like learning to breathe underwater. Catherine found herself reaching for her phone countless times, wanting to share small moments with him. Charlotte's first successful cartwheel, George's excellent marks on his history test, Lewis's new word. But the phone calls were scheduled and brief, limited by poor connections and security protocols. The British public had initially responded to William's mission with mixed feelings. Some praised his dedication to humanitarian causes, while others questioned whether he should leave his family for such an extended period. But as images began to emerge from his mission, William carrying children to safety, helping to distribute food, sitting with village elders to understand their needs, public opinion began to shift. Catherine threw herself into her royal duties with renewed determination. She increased her schedule, taking on additional engagements and focusing particularly on causes related to families and children. It was her way of honoring William's sacrifice while managing her own heartache. During a visit to a London children's hospital, a young patient named Emma, who was about Charlotte's age, asked Catherine where Prince William was. "My daddy is away helping other children who need him very much," Catherine explained gently. "Sometimes daddies have to go away to do important work, but they always love us even when they're far away." Emma nodded seriously. "My daddy is away too. He's a soldier. Do you miss your husband?" The question, asked with such innocent directness, caught Catherine off guard. For a moment her royal composure faltered and tears gathered in her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. I miss him very much." That brief moment of vulnerability was captured by photographers, and the image spread across social media within hours. The picture showed Catherine kneeling beside Emma's hospital bed, her hand gently holding the child's with tears clearly visible in her eyes. The caption that accompanied most shares read, "Even princesses miss their husbands." The response was overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from around the world. Families dealing with separation due to military deployment, work obligations, or other circumstances shared their own stories. The image had touched something universal, the pain of missing someone you love. At home, the children were adjusting in their own ways. George had taken on the role of man of the house with serious dedication, helping his mother with small tasks and trying to comfort his younger siblings when they asked for Papa. Charlotte had started keeping a diary, writing letters to her father that she planned to give him when he returned. Louis simply asked for extra bedtime stories and seemed to need more cuddles than usual. The palace staff noticed the change in atmosphere. The usual warmth and laughter that filled the family quarters had been replaced by a quieter, more subdued energy. Catherine maintained her gracious demeanor with everyone, but those who knew her well could see the strain she was under. Mrs. Jenkins found Catherine one evening in the sitting room, staring at a half-finished jigsaw puzzle that William had been working on with the children before he left. "Your Royal Highness," she said gently, "perhaps it's time to put that away for now." Catherine looked up, startled from her thoughts. "Oh no, we should keep it out. He'll want to finish it when he comes back." "Of course he will," Mrs. Jenkins agreed, "but perhaps keeping it as a daily reminder isn't helpful right now." That night, Catherine called her mother, Carol Middleton, fighting back tears as she tried to explain how difficult everything had become. "I know this is important work," she said. "I know William is making a real difference. But I feel like I'm failing everyone. The children need more than I can give them. The public expects me to be strong all the time, and I just miss him so much." Carol listened patiently before responding. "Darling, you're not failing anyone. You're human. Even future queens are allowed to miss their husbands." The children see your strength every day, and the public loves you more for showing your heart. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, William was facing his own challenges. The living conditions were harsh: basic shelter, limited food, and the constant stress of being in a region where violence could erupt at any moment. But what troubled him most were the moments of quiet when his mind wandered to home. He had brought a small photo of his family, taken during their last holiday together. In it, Catherine was laughing at something Louis had done while George and Charlotte hung from William's arms. He looked at this photo every night before sleep, wondering what his family was doing at that exact moment. The mission was more complex than anyone had anticipated. The refugee situation was worse than initial reports had indicated, and William found himself extending his stay in each location longer than planned. The people needed not just immediate aid, but long-term solutions that required careful negotiation and relationship building. One evening, after a particularly difficult day visiting families who had lost everything, William managed to get through to Catherine on a satellite phone. The connection was poor, cutting in and out, but hearing her voice was like medicine to his soul. "How are you managing?" he asked, though he could barely hear her response through the static. "We're fine," Catherine said, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. "The children miss you terribly, but they're being so brave. George has been helping me with everything, and Charlotte draws you pictures every day." "And you?" William pressed. "How are you really?" There was a long pause, filled only with the crackling of the poor connection. "I'm holding everything together," Catherine finally said. "But I need you to know that we all need you to come home. Not just safe, but soon." "I know," William replied, his voice breaking slightly. "I know, my love. I'm trying to make this count so that I won't have to come back again." After the call ended, both of them sat in their respective spaces, Catherine in their bedroom at Kensington Palace, William in a basic tent in a refugee camp, feeling the weight of the distance between them more acutely than ever. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Reports emerged that William's convoy had come under attack while traveling between camps. Though he was unharmed, 3 members of his security team had been injured, and the incident had forced the mission to reconsider its safety protocols. Catherine learned about the attack through an emergency call from the palace press office, who wanted to prepare her for the media storm that was about to break. As she listened to the details, her legs gave out from under her and she sank into the nearest chair, her world suddenly feeling like it was spinning out of control. The news of the attack spread faster than wildfire. Within minutes of the first reports, every major news outlet was covering the story. Catherine found herself at the center of a media storm while desperately trying to get more information about William's condition and the extent of the injuries to his team. The children were at school when the news broke, giving Catherine precious time to process the information before she had to tell them what had happened. She sat in her private office, surrounded by palace staff and security personnel, all trying to manage the crisis while supporting their obviously shaken princess. "We need to get the children home immediately," Catherine told the head of security. "They cannot learn about this from other children or teachers. I need to tell them myself." The palace moved quickly. George, Charlotte, and Louis were quietly collected from their school under the pretense of a family commitment. They arrived home to find their mother waiting for them in the sitting room, her composure carefully maintained but her pale complexion betraying her fear. "Is Papa okay?" Charlotte asked immediately, her young intuition picking up on the tension in the air. Catherine gathered all 3 children close to her on the sofa. "Papa is safe," she began, choosing her words carefully. "But something happened today that I need to tell you about. There was some trouble where Papa is working and some of the people with him got hurt." George's face went white. "Is Papa hurt?" "No, darling. Papa is not hurt. But the people who protect him, some of them are hurt, and we need to pray for them and their families." Louis, not fully understanding but sensing the gravity of the situation, climbed into Catherine's lap and wrapped his small arms around her neck. Charlotte began to cry quietly, while George sat very still, processing the information with a maturity that broke Catherine's heart. "When is Papa coming home?" George asked finally. "I don't know yet," Catherine admitted, "but I promise you, as soon as I know anything more, I will tell you." The hours that followed were some of the longest in Catherine's life. Every phone call could bring news, good or devastating. She found herself jumping at every sound, her heart racing each time her phone buzzed with a message. Finally, at nearly midnight, a call came through from William himself. His voice was strained but strong, and Catherine nearly collapsed with relief at the sound of it. "I'm safe," were his first words. "Catherine, I'm safe, and I need you to know that." "Thank God," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "The children, they know something happened. They're so worried." "Can you put them on the phone?" One by one, the children spoke to their father, each conversation bringing visible relief to their small faces. William's calm voice reassured them, though Catherine could hear the exhaustion and stress beneath his steady tone. When it was just the two of them on the line again, William's composure finally cracked. "Catherine, today could have been. I keep thinking about coming home to you, and today I thought I might not." "Don't," Catherine said firmly. "Don't think like that. You're safe and you're coming home. Focus on that." "The mission isn't finished," William said quietly. "There's still so much work to do here. These people are depending on us." Catherine felt her heart sink. She had hoped that the attack would prompt an immediate return, but she knew her husband well enough to understand that he wouldn't abandon his mission unless forced to do so. The next few days brought an outpouring of support from the British public and people around the world. The attack had transformed public perception of William's mission, from a royal obligation to a personal sacrifice for humanitarian causes. Messages flooded in expressing concern for his safety and admiration for his dedication, but the support came with increased pressure as well. Media outlets stationed reporters outside Kensington Palace, hoping to catch glimpses of Catherine and the children. Every public appearance was scrutinized for signs of stress or worry. Catherine found herself living under a microscope during what was already the most difficult period of her life. During a planned visit to a women's shelter, one of the residents, a young mother named Sarah who had fled domestic violence, approached Catherine during the informal meet-and-greet portion of the visit. "Your Highness," Sarah said quietly, "I know we're not supposed to talk about personal things, but I wanted you to know that watching you these past weeks, seeing how you're managing while your husband is away doing important work, it's given me strength. If someone with all your resources can struggle with missing someone, then it's okay that I struggle too." Catherine was deeply moved by Sarah's words. "We're all just doing our best," she replied. "Sometimes that's all we can do. But you make it look graceful," Sarah continued. "You show us that it's possible to be scared and proud at the same time, to miss someone terribly but still support what they're doing." That evening, Catherine reflected on Sarah's words. Without realizing it, her private struggle had become a public example of resilience. People were watching not just to see royal drama, but to see how a wife and mother coped with fear and separation. Meanwhile, William was dealing with his own impossible decision. The security situation had deteriorated further, and his team was recommending either a significant reduction in the mission's scope or an early return home. But the need on the ground was desperate. Families were arriving at refugee camps faster than aid could be distributed, and William's presence was drawing international attention that was desperately needed. He spoke with Catherine every night, and each conversation was a delicate balance of honesty about the situation and reassurance about his safety. Catherine never asked him to come home early, though William could hear the strain in her voice growing with each passing day. "The children ask about you constantly," Catherine told him during one call. "Charlotte has started sleeping with that little photo of you that she keeps by her bed. George is trying so hard to be the man of the house that I worry he's forgetting to be a child. And Louis, he keeps setting a place for you at dinner." "I know this is hard on all of you," William said. "I know I'm asking too much." "You're not asking anything," Catherine replied. "This is who you are, and it's one of the reasons I fell in love with you. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that you won't take unnecessary risks. These people need you alive and healthy, not as a martyr. Your family needs you alive and healthy." "I promise," William said, though they both knew that in his current environment, even necessary activities carried significant risk. The conversation ended as they always did now, with words of love that felt more precious than ever before. Each call could potentially be their last, and both of them carried that knowledge like a weight they couldn't put down. 3 months into William's mission, something unexpected began to happen across Britain. What had started as concern for the royal family began to evolve into something much larger. a national conversation about sacrifice, duty, and what it meant to serve others at personal cost. Schools began incorporating lessons about humanitarian work into their curricula, using William's mission as a real-time example. Children across the country started writing letters to send to the refugee camps, and many families organized fundraising efforts for the aid organizations William was working with. Catherine found herself at the heart of this movement, though she hadn't sought the role. During a visit to a primary school in Manchester, she was surprised to find that the children had prepared presentations about different humanitarian crises around the world. One 8-year-old named Oliver stood up and said, "Mrs. Prince William, my mommy says you're very brave because you let your husband go help people, even though it makes you sad." The simple honesty of the child's words brought tears to Catherine's eyes. "Thank you, Oliver. Sometimes being brave means letting the people we love do important work, even when we miss them very much." After the school visit, Catherine found herself thinking about Oliver's words. She realized that her struggle had inadvertently become a symbol of something larger: the sacrifices made by families across the country whose loved ones served in the military, worked as doctors in conflict zones, or took on dangerous jobs to help others. At home, the children were creating their own ways to cope with their father's absence. George had started a countdown calendar, marking off each day until William's scheduled return. Charlotte continued writing in her diary, but now she also drew pictures of the people her father was helping, based on the few photos that had been shared publicly. Little Louis had developed a habit of talking to William's empty chair at dinner, sharing details of his day as if his father were there to listen. At first, Catherine had gently tried to redirect this behavior, but she soon realized it was Louis's way of maintaining his connection to his father. "Papa, I lost my first tooth today," Louis announced to the empty chair one evening. "Mama says you'll be proud of me when you come home." Catherine watched this scene with a mixture of heartbreak and admiration for her youngest child's resilience. Children, she realized, had their own wisdom about love and distance. The media attention had intensified rather than diminished over time. Every public appearance was analyzed for signs of strain. Every photograph was scrutinized for clues about Catherine's emotional state. But something interesting had begun to happen. Instead of invasive questions about her personal feelings, reporters began asking about her perspective on service and sacrifice. During a press conference about a new mental health initiative, a journalist asked, "Your Royal Highness, your current situation has resonated with many families who face separation due to service commitments. What would you say to other spouses and children who are dealing with similar challenges?" Catherine paused thoughtfully before responding. "I would say that it's okay to miss someone and be proud of them at the same time. It's okay to feel scared and supportive simultaneously. These feelings don't contradict each other. They're all part of love." Her words were quoted widely, and the palace received thousands of messages from military families, medical professionals' families, and others who felt seen and understood by her acknowledgement of their experience. Meanwhile, William's mission had achieved significant success despite the challenges. International aid had increased dramatically, partly due to the attention his presence had drawn to the crisis. New refugee camps were being established with better facilities, and negotiations were underway to address some of the root causes of the displacement. But success came with a price. William had lost weight, and the stress was visible in every photo that made its way back to Britain. During their phone calls, Catherine could hear the exhaustion in his voice, even as he tried to maintain an optimistic tone for her benefit and that of the children. "You need to take care of yourself," Catherine told him during one particularly difficult conversation. "You can't help anyone if you collapse from exhaustion." "I know," William replied, "but every day I delay coming home is another day these families spend in terrible conditions. How do I balance that against my own comfort?" "It's not about your comfort," Catherine said firmly. "It's about your health and your ability to continue doing this work long term. You're no good to anyone if you burn out completely." Their conversation was interrupted by poor connection quality, but William's final words came through clearly. "I love you, all of you, more than I can express." Back in London, Catherine was dealing with her own challenges. The constant public attention was exhausting, and she found herself struggling to maintain the perfect image that royal life demanded, while processing her own very real fears and emotions. One evening, after putting the children to bed, Catherine found herself in William's study, surrounded by books and papers he had left behind. She picked up a leather-bound journal he kept for personal reflections and found an entry from just before he left. The hardest part of this mission won't be the physical danger or the difficult living conditions. It will be being away from Catherine and the children. But I keep thinking about the refugee families I'll be helping. Parents who have been separated from their children. Children who don't know if they'll ever see their parents again. If I can help reunite even one family, the sacrifice will be worth it. Reading William's private thoughts brought both comfort and renewed sadness. Catherine understood more clearly than ever why he had to go, but that understanding didn't make the missing him any easier. The next morning brought news that would change everything once again. Catherine received an urgent call from the Foreign Office. There had been a significant development in the political situation in the region where William was working. A peace agreement had been reached between the warring factions, potentially ending the conflict that had created the refugee crisis. This was incredible news for the thousands of displaced families, but it also meant that William's mission might be extended to help with the repatriation process. Catherine felt torn between joy for the families who might finally be able to return home and dread at the possibility of William's absence being prolonged. When she spoke to William that evening, she could hear both excitement and exhaustion in his voice. This could mean real peace, Catherine. These families could go home, but the repatriation process could take months, and they want me to stay to help coordinate international support. Catherine closed her eyes, feeling the weight of another impossible decision. She wanted to beg him to come home, to prioritize his own family over strangers thousands of miles away. But she also knew that this was why she had fallen in love with him, because he was the kind of man who would sacrifice personal comfort to help others find their way home. "What do you think we should do?" William asked quietly. Catherine realized that he was asking her to help him make a choice that would affect thousands of lives, including their own. The weight of that responsibility was almost overwhelming, but she also understood that this was what it meant to be married to someone destined to be king. Sometimes the decisions they made together would impact far more than just their own family. Catherine sat in silence for several long moments after William asked for her input on extending his mission. Through the static-filled connection, she could hear the sounds of the refugee camp in the background, children playing, adults talking, the general bustle of a community that had been displaced but was trying to rebuild some semblance of normal life. "Tell me about the families," Catherine said finally. "Tell me what going home would mean to them." William's voice became animated as he described meeting a grandmother named Amara, who had been separated from half her family during the conflict. "She hasn't seen her son and his children in over a year," William explained. "She carries their photo everywhere and talks about them constantly. If this peace agreement holds, she could be reunited with them within months. And if you leave now..." "The repatriation process is incredibly complex," William admitted. "Without international oversight and coordination, it could take years instead of months. Some families might never make it home." Catherine understood the weight of what he was telling her. Her husband's presence wasn't just symbolic. His involvement could literally determine whether families were reunited quickly or remained separated indefinitely. "I need you to promise me something," Catherine said finally. "If you stay, you have to commit to taking better care of yourself. You have to eat properly, rest when you can, and not take any unnecessary risks." "Does that mean?" "It means that I love you and I love the man you are. Someone who can't walk away from people who need help. Stay and help them get home. But please, please come home to us when it's done." The relief in William's voice was audible. "I love you so much, Catherine. I know what I'm asking of you, and the children is enormous." "We'll manage," Catherine said, though her heart was breaking even as she spoke the words. "We'll find a way to manage." When Catherine shared the news with the children the next morning, their reactions reflected their different personalities and levels of understanding. George nodded solemnly, as if he had expected this development. Charlotte burst into tears but then quickly dried them, saying, "Papa is helping children find their families. That's important." Louis simply asked, "Will Papa be home for my birthday?" His birthday was still 3 months away. "We hope so, sweetheart," Catherine replied, not wanting to make a promise she couldn't keep. The public response to news of the mission's extension was more complex than Catherine had anticipated. While many people expressed admiration for William's dedication, others began to question whether his first responsibility should be to his own family and country. The debate played out across social media, in newspaper editorials, and even in Parliament. Some MPs praised William's humanitarian leadership, while others suggested that his extended absence was setting a poor example for other families. Catherine found herself defending her husband's decision during what was supposed to be a routine charity visit. When a reporter asked whether she felt abandoned by William's choice to extend his mission, her response was swift and firm. "My husband is exactly where he needs to be," she said. "He's helping to ensure that other families can be reunited, that children can return to their homes and schools, that grandparents can hold their grandchildren again. I'm proud of him, and our children are proud of him." But privately, Catherine was struggling more than she let on publicly. The extended separation felt different from the original timeline. There was something harder about having hope for his return crushed, and then having to rebuild that hope around a new, uncertain deadline. She found unexpected support from an unlikely source, other royal family members who had experienced similar challenges. Princess Anne called to share her own experiences with extended family separations due to royal duties. "The public sees the glamour," Anne said, "but they don't always understand the sacrifices. You're handling this with remarkable grace." Even more meaningful was a long conversation with William's grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, who shared stories of her own husband's naval service and extended absences. "Philip was away for months at a time when the children were small," the Queen confided. "It was one of the hardest periods of my life, but it also made me stronger and more independent than I ever imagined I could be." Meanwhile, the children were developing their own coping mechanisms. George had started reading everything he could find about the region where his father was working, becoming something of an expert on the geography and politics of the area. Charlotte had begun organizing charity drives at school, collecting toys and clothes for refugee children. Louis had simply decided that Papa was on a very long adventure and would come home with exciting stories. The palace staff had also rallied around the family in touching ways. Mrs. Jenkins had started leaving small surprises for the children, special treats, new books, or activities to keep them occupied. The head gardener taught them how to plant a special garden that would bloom when William returned. Even the security team had become more like extended family, taking extra time to play football with George or read stories to Louis. One evening, while helping Charlotte with her homework, Catherine was struck by how much her daughter had matured over the past few months. Charlotte was working on a school project about heroes, and she had chosen to write about her father. "What makes Papa a hero?" Catherine asked. "He helps people even when it's hard for him," Charlotte replied without hesitation. "And even when it makes his family sad. But Mama, you're a hero too." "Me? Why?" "Because you let Papa be a hero even though you miss him. And you take care of us and all the people you meet even when you're sad inside." Catherine felt tears gathering in her eyes. Out of the mouths of babes, she thought. Charlotte had articulated something that Catherine hadn't been able to put into words herself. That night, during their scheduled call with William, Charlotte shared her school project. "I wrote that you and Mama are both heroes," she told her father. "You help people far away and Mama helps people here, and you both help people even when it's hard." William was quiet for a moment before responding. "You know what, Charlotte? I think you're a hero too, you and George and Louis. You're all being so brave and strong while Papa is away." After the children said goodnight and went to bed, William and Catherine talked longer than usual. 4 months, William said quietly. "The coordinators think we can have most families repatriated within 4 months if everything goes smoothly." "And if it doesn't go smoothly?" "Then it could be longer," William admitted. "But Catherine, the difference we're making here, families are being reunited every day. Children are finding parents they thought they'd lost forever. I can't walk away from that." "I know," Catherine said. "And I wouldn't want you to be the kind of man who could walk away from that. But I need you to know that we're barely holding things together here. The children are being incredibly brave, but they need their father. And I need my husband." "I know," William said, his voice breaking slightly. "I promise you, the moment the situation stabilizes enough for me to leave, I'm coming home. Nothing could keep me away from you and the children a single day longer than absolutely necessary." As Catherine ended the call and prepared for bed, She reflected on how much their relationship had changed over these months of separation. They had learned to communicate differently, to support each other across vast distances, to make difficult decisions together even when they were apart. But she also knew that their family was being tested in ways they had never experienced before, and she wasn't sure how much longer they could maintain this level of strain before something fundamental began to crack. 5 months into William's mission, Catherine received a call that changed everything. It was 3 in the morning when her secure phone rang, instantly jolting her awake with the kind of fear that had become all too familiar. She grabbed the phone, her heart racing as she prepared for whatever news might come. "Catherine, it's me." William's voice came through, but something was different. He sounded exhausted beyond measure, but there was also something else. Relief, perhaps, or resolution. "What's happened? Are you all right?" "I'm fine, but I need to tell you something." "We've had a breakthrough. The peace negotiations have accelerated dramatically, and they've agreed to international oversight for the repatriation process. I can come home." Catherine sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. "When?" 2 weeks. Maybe less if the final arrangements go smoothly. For a moment, Catherine couldn't speak. After months of uncertainty, extensions, and postponed return dates, the news felt almost too good to be true. "Really? You're really coming home?" "Really?" William confirmed, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "The groundwork is laid. The international community is committed to seeing this through, and my part of the mission is essentially complete. I can finally come home to my family." Catherine began to cry, tears of relief, exhaustion, and overwhelming joy all mixed together. "The children will be so happy. It's been so difficult, William. I know, my love, I know, but it's almost over now." The next morning, Catherine faced the delightful challenge of telling the children that their father was finally coming home. She decided to tell them over breakfast, wanting to create a special moment they would all remember. "I have some very exciting news," she announced as they sat around the kitchen table. "Papa called last night and he's coming home in 2 weeks." The reaction was immediate and joyful chaos. Charlotte jumped up from her chair and began dancing around the kitchen. George grinned widely and asked if he could help plan a welcome home celebration. Louis clapped his hands and shouted, "Papa! Papa's coming home!" "Can we make a banner?" Charlotte asked breathlessly. "Can we plan a party?" George added. "Can I show Papa my new tricks?" Louis chimed in. Catherine laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Yes to all of those things. We're going to give Papa the most wonderful welcome home celebration ever." The news of William's impending return spread quickly, and the public response was overwhelmingly positive. The mission had been deemed a remarkable success. Thousands of families had been reunited, international aid had increased dramatically, and the peace agreement had held firm. William was returning home not just as a husband and father, but as someone who had made a real difference in the world. But Catherine was most focused on the personal victory. Her family was going to be whole again. The empty chair at the dinner table would finally be filled. The children would have their father back. And she would have her husband, her partner, her best friend, her other half, home where he belonged. The 2 weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. The children threw themselves into creating welcome home decorations with enthusiasm that bordered on manic. Charlotte made dozens of drawings showing their family together again. George researched everything that had happened in Britain while his father was away, preparing to give him a comprehensive briefing. Louis practiced all the new words he had learned, wanting to impress Papa with his expanding vocabulary. Catherine found herself alternating between excitement and nervousness. It had been 5 months since she had seen William in person. They had both been through experiences that had changed them. She had learned to manage a royal household and public duties, essentially as a single parent. While he had experienced things she couldn't fully imagine in one of the world's most challenging environments. Would they slip back into their old patterns easily, or would they need time to reconnect? It was a question that many military families faced, but it felt uniquely challenging given the public nature of their lives. 3 days before William's scheduled return, Catherine received an unexpected visitor. Sarah, the young mother from the women's shelter whom Catherine had met months earlier, had asked to speak with her privately. "Your Royal Highness," Sarah said, "I hope you don't mind me asking to see you, but I wanted to thank you for something. Of course, what can I help you with? Watching you these past months, seeing how you handled your husband being away, how you stayed strong for your children while still showing that you missed him. It helped me understand something important about my own situation." Catherine was intrigued. "What was that?" "You showed me that it's possible to love someone and miss them and still be strong on your own. I've been so afraid to leave my abusive relationship because I didn't think I could manage alone. But watching you manage alone, seeing that even someone with all your advantages struggles with separation but gets through it, it gave me courage." Sarah paused, gathering her thoughts. "I wanted you to know that I've left him. I've taken my children and we're starting over. And part of the reason I was brave enough to do it was because I watched you be brave every day." Catherine was deeply moved. She had been so focused on getting through each day that she hadn't realized her struggle had become an inspiration to others. "Sarah, you were already brave. You just needed to see it in yourself." "Maybe," Sarah said, "but sometimes we need to see our own strength reflected in someone else before we can recognize it." The conversation stayed with Catherine for the rest of the week. She realized that the months of separation, while incredibly difficult, had revealed reserves of strength and independence she hadn't known she possessed. She had successfully managed royal duties, raised 3 children essentially as a single parent, and maintained public composure while dealing with private heartbreak. She was not the same woman who had said goodbye to William 5 months ago. The night before William's return, Catherine couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of their bedroom, looking out at the gardens where the children had planted flowers that were now in full bloom. Tomorrow her husband would be home. Tomorrow their family would be complete again. But she also knew that tomorrow would bring its own challenges. They would all need time to readjust to being together again. The children would need to get used to having both parents present. William would need time to decompress from his intense experience. And she would need to figure out how to balance the independence she had developed with the partnership she had missed so desperately. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Catherine's last thought was of the moment she would see William's face again, hold him in her arms and know that their long separation was finally over. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family, the way it was always meant to be. The phone rang early the next morning with final confirmation of William's arrival time. He would be landing at RAF Northolt at 2 p.m., and he would be home by 3:30. After 152 days of separation, Catherine began counting down the hours until her husband came home. The morning of William's return dawned bright and clear, as if even the weather understood the significance of the day. Catherine woke before her alarm, her heart already racing with anticipation. After 152 days of separation, her husband was finally coming home. The children had been awake since dawn, their excitement making it impossible for them to sleep any longer. Catherine found them in the kitchen, where they had attempted to make breakfast on their own as a surprise. The result was a glorious mess of spilled orange juice, scattered cereal, and toast that was slightly burnt, but their pride in their effort was infectious. "We wanted to make Papa's favorite breakfast," Charlotte explained, gesturing to the chaos around them. "But we forgot how to make eggs," George added sheepishly. "That's all right," Catherine laughed, pulling her children close for a hug. "Papa will be so happy just to see you all. We can make eggs together when he gets home." The hours until William's arrival crawled by despite the family's attempts to stay busy. They hung the banners the children had made, arranged flowers throughout the house, and triple-checked every detail of their welcome home preparations. The children had each prepared special presentations for their father. George had created a detailed timeline of everything that had happened while William was away. Charlotte had bound all her drawings into a special book. And Louis had practiced a song he had learned at nursery school. At 2 p.m., Catherine received the call confirming that William's plane had landed safely. Her hands were shaking as she hung up the phone. "Papa's plane has landed," she announced to the children, who erupted in cheers and began racing around the house in excitement. The drive from RAF Northolt to Kensington Palace would take approximately 90 minutes, depending on traffic. Catherine found herself watching the clock obsessively, calculating and recalculating William's estimated arrival time. Meanwhile, outside the palace gates, a small crowd had gathered. Word had spread about William's return, and people had come to show their support for the family's reunion. Many held signs thanking William for his humanitarian work, while others simply wanted to witness the end of a separation that had captured the nation's attention. Inside the palace, The staff had prepared for William's arrival with touching attention to detail. Mrs. Jenkins had arranged fresh flowers in every room. The kitchen staff had prepared all of William's favorite foods. And even the gardening team had made sure the grounds looked perfect for his homecoming. At 3:15 p.m., Catherine received another call. William's convoy was 5 minutes away. She gathered the children in the front hall, where they had planned to greet him. Looking at her 3 children, George standing tall and trying to appear grown up, Charlotte bouncing with barely contained excitement, and Louis clutching a drawing he had made that morning, Catherine felt overwhelmed with love and pride. "Remember," she told them gently, "Papa has been away for a very long time and he's had some difficult experiences. He might be tired, and he might need some time to adjust to being home. The most important thing is that we're all together again." The sound of cars approaching sent the children running to the window. Catherine took a deep breath, smoothing her dress and checking her appearance one final time in the hall mirror. She looked different than she had 5 months ago. There were new lines around her eyes from the stress and worry, but there was also something new in her expression, a strength and confidence that hadn't been there before. The front door opened, and William stepped inside. For a moment, everyone froze. 5 months had changed him too. He was thinner, tanned from the African sun, and there was something different in his eyes, the look of someone who had seen things that would stay with him forever. But his smile when it came was exactly the same. "Papa!" Louis broke the spell, running toward his father with his arms outstretched. William dropped his bag and scooped up his youngest son, spinning him around as Louis giggled with delight. Charlotte was next, launching herself into her father's arms and talking rapidly about everything she wanted to show him. George approached more slowly, but his relief and joy were evident as William pulled him into a tight embrace. Finally, William's eyes met Catherine's over the children's heads. For a moment, they just looked at each other, taking in the changes that 5 months had wrought, remembering why they had fallen in love, and acknowledging the magnitude of what they had all endured. William handed Louis to George and walked slowly toward his wife. When he reached her, he took her hands in his, just as he had on the day he left. "Hello, beautiful," he said softly. "Welcome home," Catherine replied, and then they were in each other's arms, holding on tightly as if to make up for all the embraces they had missed over the past 5 months. The children clustered around their parents, and for several minutes the family simply held each other in the front hall of Kensington Palace, complete again after what had felt like a lifetime apart. "I have so much to tell you," William said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "Later," Catherine replied. "Right now we just need you to be here." The evening that followed was magical in its ordinariness. They had dinner together around the kitchen table, with William telling stories from his mission while the children shared their own adventures from his absence. Louis insisted on sitting in William's lap throughout the meal, as if he was afraid his father might disappear again if he let go. After dinner, they moved to the sitting room, where the children presented their gifts and projects. William listened to George's detailed briefing with serious attention, admired every single one of Charlotte's drawings, and applauded enthusiastically when Louis performed his song. "You've all grown so much," William marveled. "I can't believe how mature and responsible you've all become." "Mama taught us," Charlotte said simply. "She said we had to be extra good while you were away helping other children." William looked at Catherine with deep gratitude and love. "Mama did an incredible job," he agreed. "I'm so proud of all of you." As the evening wound down and the children were tucked into bed, William and Catherine finally had time alone together. They sat in their bedroom talking quietly about the experiences that had shaped them during their time apart. "I'm different," William said honestly. "What I saw there, the people I met, the things I experienced, they've changed me." "I'm different too," Catherine replied. "These months taught me things about myself I didn't know. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, but also that I don't want to be that strong alone anymore." They talked late into the night, sharing stories, fears, hopes, and dreams. They talked about the families William had helped reunite, about the children Catherine had supported, about the lessons they had learned about love and sacrifice and duty. "I need you to know," William said as they finally prepared for sleep, "that every single day I was away, I thought about coming home to you. You and the children were what kept me going when everything else seemed impossible. And I need you to know Catherine replied, "that supporting your mission, even when it broke my heart, was one of the hardest and most important things I've ever done. I'm proud of what you accomplished, and I'm proud that I was strong enough to let you go." As they settled into bed together for the first time in 152 days, both William and Catherine reflected on the journey they had completed. The separation had tested their love, their family, and their commitment to service in ways they had never imagined. But it had also proven that their bond was strong enough to survive anything. Outside their window, London slept peacefully, and across the world, families that William had helped were settling into their own homes for the first time in years. The mission had been a success on every level: politically, humanitarian, and personal. The goodbye that had stirred the nation was finally over, and the hello that followed was everything they had dreamed it would be during those long months apart. Their family was whole again, stronger for having been tested, and ready for whatever the future might bring. In the morning, they would return to their royal duties, their public responsibilities, and their roles as leaders and examples to others. But tonight they were simply a family, reunited and grateful, holding tight to the love that had sustained them through the longest separation of their lives.